Hello and welcome back. Today I'm doing a full string change on my Charvel San Dimas Sassafras. This guitar is equipped with a Floyd Rose 1000 that I added some stainless steel parts to customize it a little bit. I'll be using several 3D printed tools that I designed and printed, and I wanted to show them off because they actually make string changes on Floyd Rose guitars way less painful for me, and maybe they will for you too. Everything I'm using today will have links in the description. Most of the printed tools also have their own dedicated videos if you want to check out the full breakdowns on those. This video isn't sponsored, but I have thrown in some Amazon affiliate links for the non-printed stuff I use throughout the video. If you want to check those out as well, I would appreciate it. Anyway, let's jump into it. I start by propping the guitar up on this 3D printed neck rest. It cradles the neck pretty nicely and keeps everything stable while I work. Then I grab this little tool I recently designed. I call it the Trim Chalk, and I came up with this cool little logo for it. It slides under the bridge in the pocket, and one of the string lock screws goes right through it, so you don't have to move it around to get to all the screws. If you're like me, you've probably used a 9-volt battery wrapped in electrical tape before to do this. It works, but I feel like this is a little bit nicer solution. This thing is small, stays out of the way, and lives in my mini toolbox with all my other guitar tools. Anyway, I pop that on, then loosen the locking nut screws and pull the clamps off. I keep them in the exact order and orientation that they came off, which saves from possible tuning issues later. Now normally here I would use my Fantic screwdriver with my 3D printed string winder bit. But I lent the screwdriver to a friend right before filming, so the Ryobi had to do the job today. While the strings are off, I take the opportunity to clean and oil the fretboard, but first I hit the frets with my rotary tool and some polishing compound while using a couple fretboard protectors. Once those frets are shining, I clean everything up with Dunlop Formula 65.
Stuff here.
I was out of their fretboard conditioner, so the polish had to pull double duty this time and clean the fretboard. I also wiped down the body while I was at it. The fretboard looks awful thirsty, so I gave it a good coat of lemon oil and wiped off the excess. I also use a soft bristle brush to get all the dust out of the pickup cavities and from around the Floyd. While I'm down there, I set all the fine tuners to the middle position so I've got maximum fine tuning range in both directions if and when I need it later. Now it's time for fresh strings. I've been using these Ernie Ball paradigms for a couple years now, and I really like them. I'm using the 9-42 set on this guitar, which will be tuned to standard, but I also use these on guitars that are half step down. For things like D standard, drop C, I bump it up to the 10-46 gauge set. When I'm stringing up a Floyd Rose, I like to thread the strings on backwards through the tuning pegs. All the way up until the wrap is just about to hit the peg. Then I just bend it over. Down at the bridge, I pull each string straight and cut it just behind the fine tuners. That gives me a clean 2 to 3 wraps on the peg. And the string winder bit makes quick work of winding the strings back up. Sometimes I cut the ball ends off later, sometimes I forget like last time. With my right hand, I hold the ball end up while simultaneously pushing down on the string with another finger. I do this so that it winds neatly from top to bottom. Once all the strings are on, I make sure the string retainer bar is sitting low enough that the strings are fully seated in the locking nut. Then I stretch the strings and bring the guitar up to pitch. Having the strings fully seated in the nut keeps the tuning stable when I eventually tighten the locking nut. Next, I reinstall the locking clamps, but I leave them loose. And then tune the guitar. Next, I can remove the trem chock. And then check the neck relief with my 3D printed relief gauge that utilizes a tire tread depth gauge. There's a link in the description to a video where I explain how to properly use this if you want the full details. But a question I get a lot is whether the string gauge affects the reading. The answer is no. Let me show you in this crude illustration. You've got your nut on the left and the saddle on the right. The measurement we care about is always from the bottom of the string to the top of the fret wire. Since the string always rests on these 2 points, the nut and the saddle, the bottom of the string stays in the same place no matter the gauge. So the reading doesn't change. I hope this makes sense and clears up any confusion. From here, I usually play the guitar for a bit, which lets the strings stretch out more naturally before locking the nut. I could just stretch the hell out of the strings more than I did before and then tune it up and lock the nut, but doing it this way just works for me. It's just easier to adjust tuning with the tuning pegs at this point rather than the fine tuners. Since I didn't change string gauges or tuning, the Floyd should settle back to its previous float, and it eventually does. If I am changing string gauges though, I use a 3D printed blocker. Unfortunately, I forgot to hit record while doing this on my Schecter SLS Elite, so bear with me while I quickly demonstrate what to do. I flip the guitar over, using something to prop the body up so the bridge isn't touching, which could change the measurement that you'll need. I remove my 3D printed magnetic cover plate and measure the gap between the trim block and the body, which in my case on this Schecter is 13.5 millimeters. I then design and print my blocker to that exact measurement. I slide the blocker on, loosen the claw screws until the block is pinned in place, at which point the bridge should be parallel to the body again. I stretch and tune the strings to pitch, and once it's holding tune, I lock the locking nut. Next, I tighten the claw screws evenly on both sides until the blocker slides out easily. Then I check the tuning again. If it's off, I adjust the claw screws a little bit at a time until the low E and the high E strings are back to pitch. The strings in between usually follow, and the bridge should have returned to a perfect float. Then I finish with the fine tuners if needed. This keeps me from doing the back and forth game between the claw screws and the fine tuners. And that's it. Alright, in closing, I'll be honest, I used to absolutely hate Floyd Rose guitars, especially when changing string gauge or tuning. I'd get stuck in that miserable loosen the strings, tighten the springs dance, and usually end up rage quitting. This trim blocker has genuinely made that process way less frustrating. I can actually enjoy the guitar again instead of wanting to smash it against a fucking wall. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Again, all the links are in the description. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you in the next one. And as always, have the best day ever.